Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Good Hearted Podcast. Today, I'm sharing 5 things that I've learned about going to therapy. Before I even get into this topic, I first just wanted to offer kind of a trigger warning just because I'm probably going to mention some issues that I've been having or have had in the past, such as unaliving myself and or trauma and what that has looked like for me. So if that's something that you don't want to listen to or you can't listen to, please skip this episode. I totally understand that this topic might be really hard for some people to listen to. So I just wanted to offer that up first, just because as I was kind of going through my outline for what I've learned, I feel like there's no way to not talk about like why I have gone to therapy. And some of those topics might be triggering for you. So either way, I don't plan to like super go into, all of my stuff in detail. I just wanted to let you know before we got started in case this episode isn't going to be for you. So, I told you a few episodes ago that I had finally started to go to therapy. This was something I was wanting to do for a long time, and I just felt like I was hitting roadblock after roadblock. It did not seem very easy to get connected with a therapist that took my insurance and that would be affordable and also had views that aligned with mine and what my goals were for healing and for therapy. And so I just thought I would share 5 things that I've learned from going to therapy now that I've had a couple sessions and I've gone through the process of finding a therapist that works for me. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'm sorry, I'm really struggling with my lighting today. It is like kind of overcast outside and it keeps getting sunny and bright and then cloudy again. And I feel like I look dark right now, but if I turn my lights up, it's like very harsh. So, anyway, sorry about that. Maybe if I like move back a tad. I don't know. Maybe this is just going to be a dark and moody episode, which I guess kind of works for the topic. Okay, sorry. I'm going to stop messing with that and just get on with it. So, the first thing I learned about therapy is that when you're in a constant state of depression and or anxiety, it feels impossible to get connected with a therapist. I know there are some resources out there, but I really struggled finding somebody who was in my area that took my insurance and was in my price point that I was willing to spend. And then I finally narrowed it down to 2 people, and then both of them had like barely any availability. And I had to make special arrangements to make sure I could do my therapy appointments during the day. And I'm happy to make those changes and those arrangements, but just when you are feeling very hopeless and helpless and you need that help, it is daunting to try to find a therapist. So if you are feeling that way, like please do not feel like you are alone in any way. I think that's very normal because all of us want something different from our therapy, from our therapist, and the way that we want to heal and grow. And so it's just a lot to consider. It's a lot to just physically try to get help, uh, especially if you're somebody like me who doesn't really like to ask for help and really struggles with that. So I'm not saying this as something to deter you, but I just learned how hard it is. I learned why people put off getting the help that they need, put off going to therapy just like I have for the last like 2 years. And it's just a lot. It's a lot. And thankfully, I had help from my husband to help me figure out what was going to be best for me. But still, it took us several weeks after I finally got serious about wanting to start therapy to get all the logistics figured out. So, the second thing I learned about therapy is that I was actually eligible for 5 free therapy sessions through Dylan's insurance at work. So, we just had to call up our insurance and explain why we needed therapy, what kind of the situation was. And like I said, I was eligible for free sessions, which is huge when you're worried about the financial commitment to therapy and or having wasted your time with a therapist that's not good for you. So I kind of went in with the attitude of, well, whether or not this goes well, at least I'm not paying for it yet. It kind of would allow me to get the introduction to therapy and make sure it was something that was going to be a good fit for me. So you may or may not have those kinds of benefits, or maybe even other benefits available to you that make therapy a little easier for you to afford and or just get your hands on in general. Most therapists also offer free consultations, either over the phone or maybe a video chat, or even meeting in person to make sure that you jive well together, that you feel those good vibes that you need when you're meeting with somebody like that. And I think that's so important to take advantage of that, because you just never know, especially if you've never been to therapy before. It's a little nerve-wracking, and I think it's kind of peace of mind to make sure that you can have a conversation with this person. So definitely take advantage of the free consultation, whether it's, like I said, virtual or in person. I think that can be really beneficial. So the third thing I learned about therapy was that I could go at my own pace. I was kind of worried that as soon as I started therapy, I would have to dig up like all of my past trauma all at once and just like word vomit it out. And I was really nervous that mentally I wasn't going to be able to handle that. So during my like consultation with my therapist that I ended up staying with, I just said, I am open to talk about everything that has happened, but I want to really work on my stresses right now, what's going on right now. And she reassured me and told me like she's never going to push me to talk about things I don't want to talk about, and all of that. And I appreciated that, but I was like, I think I'm ready. I'm just not sure where to start. It's very overwhelming. I feel like I have so much and nothing to say at the same time sometimes. And so that has been great, just to take little like things that have been common stressors in my life right now and tackling those one at a time. And what has really been cool about that approach is that, whatever shit is happening to me, like in real life, in real time, we're able to kind of work through it, talk through it, and find out that maybe these feelings started coming up for me years before now, like maybe even into my childhood or 10 years ago. And just kind of working slowly through those things. So I've learned that with therapy, you can take it slow, you can take it at your own pace, and just, like I said, tackle one little thing at a time if that's how you want to do your therapy sessions. Because I was just kind of under the impression that it would be like quick and like getting to the point and digging up all of all of the bad stuff that I've been avoiding for so long, and that it was going to be mentally exhausting and emotionally exhausting. But I am glad that I have found out otherwise. So, the fourth thing I've learned about therapy is that even if you have a good session, it can be extremely exhausting. Like the first couple times that I went, it was pretty low key, and I was kind of just like venting honestly about my day or my week, things that I had struggled with being a mom that week, or just feeling like I've kind of lost myself or struggling with my anxiety, like whatever the thing was. I was only in there for like an hour, but I would end up brain dumping just like everything. Everything that was stressing me out, all of the thoughts that were coming in my head, I was trying to verbalize them so I could communicate better with my therapist and tell her like my true feelings. And that's tiring. It is a lot. So even if you feel like you've had a good session and you didn't cry or whatever, it can still be really tiring. And so I've tried to be really intentional about when I schedule my appointments. I'm personally only doing every 3 weeks. A lot of people do every week or, every other week. And 3 weeks just seems to be kind of the sweet spot for me. I tend to have a hard week and then an easy week and then a hard week. And then I go back to my therapist and I can kind of like rehash everything. But one time I did go back within 2 weeks and it just didn't feel like enough time. I didn't really have a lot to talk about because I felt like I was still working on the things we had spoke about in our previous session, if that makes sense. So by having them every 3 weeks, I can kind of block out my whole day because I know that I'm going to be tired after that session. And so what I've been doing lately is scheduling a tattoo appointment afterwards, or, choosing to go shopping or treat myself to lunch, just go home and watch a show. I don't expect anything else out of myself the days that I have therapy because, like I said, even though it's only an hour, it's a small portion of my day. It takes up so much of my energy. Sometimes I feel really good after a therapy appointment, but I'm still exhausted. I'm still like mentally checked out, and I'm always ready for bed by like 8 o'clock those nights because the rest of the day, my wheels are just kind of turning, thinking about all the things that I went over with my therapist, how I want to change things. I have other thoughts and feelings about them that I didn't have in my session. And so it's just a lot for a day. So just know if you feel exhausted after a therapy appointment, that's totally normal. And plan to treat yourself in some way on those days. Don't make it like a crazy, stressful, busy day where you have a bunch of appointments that are, not relaxing. Instead, maybe choose to try to go get a pedicure afterwards, or, like I said, literally just sit at home and watch a TV show and use that as an excuse to rest and relax. So I've been contemplating going to therapy for a very long time. And I think the reasons I didn't start was because I was scared. I was terrified to dig into some of my past trauma. And when I say trauma, that looks different for everyone. I saw on TikTok the other day that somebody can have two totally different experiences in childhood and still both experience trauma. For instance, Dylan doesn't look back at his childhood and see anything as trauma. But in this TikTok I was watching of this talk that this guy was doing, he said, as a child, you can have your older sibling rip a teddy bear out of your hand and smash it on the floor and do whatever, and you throw a fit and you cry and your feelings are hurt. If that is the extent of your trauma, like, consider yourself blessed, but it's still trauma, versus the whole other spectrum of all the terrible things that can happen to you as a child. And so the word trauma has become way more commonly used. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I just want to also point out that trauma is like a big, broad spectrum. It can be something that you feel is very small or very big, but this is not a comparison contest. You shouldn't be comparing your trauma to somebody else's or belittling somebody else's or even your own, because it's not as bad as what some people have had. And sometimes when I started first using the word trauma to like talk about my experiences, it seemed a little dramatic, but I think it's calling it what it is. And that's kind of the end of that. So, like I was saying, I was scared to dig into all of that old trauma. And then also just kind of being forced to face things that I have not wanted to for a very long time. And maybe have some feelings come up and thoughts come up that I was not comfortable with, or, just all of those bad feelings you think about when you think about therapy. Also, if you can hear Harper and Dylan, they are both here right now and they are playing. So those are those noises if you hear anything. I keep going on little tangents and I can't like finish this thought, but what I was trying to say is I finally knew that I needed to start going to therapy because I was having a lot of suicidal thoughts in December and November of last year, and not necessarily in what I thought was suicidal thoughts, but when I talked to like the benefits coordinator, like talking about how to get hooked up with a therapist, she asked if I ever think about going to sleep and not waking up. And I instantly broke down because that was like exactly how I was feeling. Or going for a walk and going missing. And like that is so sad, and that I'm sure that's hard to hear, but that was just truthfully how I was feeling, and I couldn't explain it. Like, I did not know if there was like one specific thing that was making me feel that way, if it was a lot of things, if it was just my mind, if it was my medication. Like, I just felt so out of whack and so depressed, like more so than I ever have been in my life. And so that's when I really knew that it was time to get serious and to go see a therapist. And so I didn't even really talk to her about that, I don't think, in any of my sessions actually. But I have learned that it is really nice to be able to kind of vent and talk to somebody who is outside of your kind of inner circle and the little world that you live in with your friends and your family, to just hear your perspective and validate the thoughts that you're having, or help you dig into them more and figure out why you're feeling that way, or how you can do something differently in a situation, if it's a you problem or if it's a them problem. Like, you know, and I don't think therapists will generally say like who is the bad guy in the situation, but they're wanting to get to the root of you and how you feel about that situation, whether or not you are the good guy or the bad guy. And so while it's awesome to have somebody to talk to about like your recent struggles and just vent if you had a rough day, it's also kind of crazy to be super open and vulnerable with a total stranger. One of the times that I had an appointment and I had kind of a breakthrough and I started crying like a lot in her office, I felt very relieved and proud of myself that I had reached that point with her assistance and her guidance, kind of leading me to what the deeper reason was, what the deeper feelings were. But I still kind of felt embarrassed afterwards. Like after I kind of had my cry and I like sat back up, I was like, wait, I don't even know this person. Like I just told like a deep-seated fear of mine to a total fucking stranger, and that didn't feel great at first. I'm sure I will get more used to it the more that I meet with her and get to know her, or at least how we work together, because I guess you don't really get to know your therapist, it's about you when you're there. But I was just like, whoa, that was weird. Like I don't even get like that with Dylan on a regular basis, and now I've just done it with like a total stranger. So that was something that I've learned that is cool but also a little bizarre and could be a roadblock, but I think you just have to like mentally say to yourself, this happens all the time. This is their job. This is the therapist's job to help you get to this point. And there is nothing wrong with showing that vulnerability and just letting your emotions kind of take hold of you for once instead of constantly trying to bottle them up and keep them contained. So I just want to wrap up this episode by saying, even though some things have been hard, going to therapy has been great for me for a lot of reasons. It's not like it's all been great and that it's all been fun, but overall, I am really feeling like I am healing and kind of looking forward to my next therapy appointment, even if I don't have any idea what I want to talk about when I go there. But I'm just hopeful. And I haven't felt like that in a very long time. And it took a lot of work to get to this point. But please don't let that deter you from getting the help that you need if you feel like you would benefit from going to a therapist, because it's not easy, it's overwhelming, but I think in the long run, it's worth it if you can find a therapist that you work with well, and know that you can always change your therapist if it's not working anymore or they're not serving you the way that you need to be, not helping you in the way you need to be helped. That happens. So there shouldn't be hard feelings if you decide you have to move to be with a different therapist or a different group of therapists or whatever. So I hope this episode gives you a little bit of insight into what it's been like for me to go to therapy. Everybody has a different experience, and I didn't want to go into like, oh, this is what my therapist and I are working on, because even if I talked about that, I don't know if it would help you. But I just wanted to let you know kind of what I have learned from going through the process of starting therapy and what that looks like for me. And maybe in a year or so I'll do an update and talk about how I've grown since I started therapy in the first place. So thank you so much for watching today's video. I appreciate you so much. And if you enjoyed it, please be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next one.